Is luck on your side? Well, you have a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card when you complete our survey. We value the opinion of each and every member of our audience. Whether you just listen to our podcasts or only read our newsletters, we want to hear from you. This survey expires in a week, so be sure you have your chance to give us your feedback. Just go to thecyberwire.com/survey. That's thecyberwire.com/survey. And best of luck to you. Funding for this CyberWire podcast is made possible in part by Duo. While remote work has been on the rise for years now, the recent rapid expansion of work-from-home culture presents new security challenges. It's Duo's mission to make application access more secure for organizations of all sizes. Duo's modern access security is designed to safeguard all users, devices, and applications so you can stay focused on what you do best. Give your organization the peace of mind that only complete device visibility can bring. Visit duo.sc/cyberwire to sign up for a free 30-day trial. And we thank Duo for sponsoring our show. Indian authorities warn the country's transportation sector that it may be a target for cyberespionage. Google's Project Zero describes an elaborate and expensive campaign that exploited zero-day vulnerabilities. The SilverFish threat group is elaborate, well-resourced, and well-organized. Threat actors are quietly altering mailbox permissions. REvil is back. Some say yes to Moscow, others say nyet. Dinah Davis from Arctic Wolf on Security Metrics. Our guest is Graeme Bunton from the DNS Abuse Institute. And 2 Infraud operators are sentenced. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Monday, March 22nd, 2021. The Business Standard reports that India's Ministry of Road Transport and Highways yesterday alerted the National Highways Authority of India, the National Highways and Infrastructure Development Corporation, and India's automobile makers to increase their readiness to defend themselves against cyber attack. The ministry said, quote, "The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways received an alert from CERT-IN regarding targeted intrusion activities directed toward Indian transport sector with possible malicious intentions. The ministry has advised departments and organizations under transport sector to strengthen the security posture of their infrastructure." End quote. The warning prompted much speculation in the Indian press that China has shifted its targets from the energy to the transportation sector. The Hindu Business Line's coverage is representative. A note the paper obtained represents CERT-IN's own conclusions. Quote, "CERT-IN has observed continued targeted intrusion activities from Chinese state-sponsored actors toward Indian transport sector with the possible intention to collect intelligence and conduct cyberespionage. The notable threat actors such as APT-41 Barium, Tonto Team, APT-101 Stone Panda, APT-15 Kachang, APT-27 Emissary Panda, Win-T Groups, and Red Echo have been targeting organizations across a range of industries aligned with the national strategic goals of the Chinese national policy priorities." End quote. Google's Project Zero has provided an update on a campaign they began tracking last year, providing additional information on 7 zero days its researchers detected a threat actor using this past October. Windows, iOS, and Android systems were affected. Victims were usually infected in watering hole attacks. The unknown threat actor used a total of 11 zero days over their campaign's year-long run. Their development would have been expensive, and the infrastructure used was large and carefully constructed. The operation seems beyond the capabilities of any ordinary criminal group. Project Zero summarized the threat actor's sophistication as followed, quote, "Overall, each of the exploits themselves showed an expert understanding of exploit development and the vulnerability being exploited. In the case of the Chrome FreeType Zero Day, the exploitation method was novel to Project Zero. The process to figure out how to trigger the iOS kernel privilege vulnerability would have been non-trivial. The obfuscation methods were varied and time-consuming to figure out." End quote. Researchers at Swiss security firm Prodaft report that they've identified a threat actor, they call it SilverFish, whose target list significantly overlaps the list of victims of SolarWinds exploitation. The researchers also say that some of SilverFish's servers were also used by the Evil Corp crime group. Prodaft offers no attribution, but they do characterize as a highly sophisticated group of cyber criminals targeting exclusively large corporations and public institutions worldwide, with focus on the EU and US. The actor can be viewed as an entity possessing a high degree of sophistication and who goes beyond the necessary technical skills to conduct an operation of this magnitude. The actor demonstrates a comprehensive and up-to-date knowledge of exploitation practices, security architecture, protocols, and anonymization techniques. More importantly, their knowledge transcends regional, cultural, and linguistic barriers." End quote. Prodaft gained its information, the company says, by getting inside SilverFish's command and control servers. SilverFish's list of victims looks like an espionage pick list. The dashboard Prodaft found indicates that SilverFish is running several distinct teams. Prodaft also says that the comments the operators entered alongside their targets are for the most part written in English and Russian, with a healthy leavening of urban slang. And whoever SilverFish's operators are, they punch the clock like a bunch of employees of the month. Prodaft says they work mostly Mondays through Fridays, between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., Coordinated Universal Time. Researchers at FireEye's Mandiant unit say that they've observed threat actors modifying mailbox folder permissions of user mailboxes to maintain persistent access to the targeted user's email messages. Mailbox permissions, Mandiant says, are often not monitored by defenders. They've added mitigation suggestions to their white paper on the topic. The REvil ransomware gang has hit Taiwanese device manufacturer Acer with a $50 million extortion demand, the record by Recorded Future reports. The extortion includes the now routine threat to release stolen company documents. Acer told Bleeping Computer that to preserve the security of their continuing investigation, they are unable to provide details on the incident. Tech companies face a range of regulatory and legal challenges as they do business in a range of countries. Many of those challenges have to do with protecting personal data. While certainly not trivial, in most cases that's a regulatory burden companies are meeting, often by complying with the most stringent applicable rules and letting those set the general standard way of operating. So, businesses organize themselves to operate in compliance with GDPR, to take one common standard. In other cases, it's trickier, especially where the law tends to serve policy and not vice versa. Consider the accommodation Apple recently reached with Russia. Wired reports that beginning next month, iOS devices sold in Russia will prompt users to install a set of government-approved apps, browsers, messenger platforms, and even antivirus services. It's not exactly preloading, and users can opt out if they so choose, but Wired still sees it as a bending on Apple's part to the demands of an authoritarian regime. And the magazine thinks that other such regimes will notice and that Apple may hear from like-minded governments soon. Other vendors have pulled away. Cellbrite, for one, the lawful intercept vendor that's been criticized for the ways in which some of its government customers have abused its products, announced last week that, effective immediately, it would no longer do business with any customers, private or public, in either Russia or Belarus. The company said, quote, "As part of our standard business operations, we regularly review and update our compliance policies to ensure we operate according to accepted international rules and regulations," end quote. And, by implication, selling its digital intelligence solutions to Moscow and Minsk wouldn't be good international citizenship. And finally, the U.S. Justice Department announced Friday that 2 gentlemen associated with the Infraud organization were sentenced to terms of imprisonment for their part in the activities of Infraud, which Justice says involved the mass acquisition and sale of fraud-related goods and services, including stolen identities, compromised credit card data, computer malware, and other contraband. Sergei Medvedev, also known as Stelz, Segmed, and SurgeBear of Russia, pleaded guilty in the District of Nevada to one count of racketeering, conspiracy, and received 10 years in prison. Mr. Medvedev is a co-founder of Infraud. Marco Leopard, also known as Leopard MK of North Macedonia, also copped a guilty plea, and he received 5 years at Club Fed. Infraud was a big operation. The Department of Justice says the transnational gang was responsible for the sale and or purchase of over 4 million compromised credit and debit card numbers. The actual loss associated with Infraud was in excess of $568 million US. And that's a lot by any standard. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Tanium. In today's connected world, we rely on endpoints for everything, from telework to mobile banking, telemedicine, and online learning. The large-scale shift to remote work in the COVID-19 era makes managing and securing these endpoints more challenging than ever. Tanium, the provider of endpoint management and security built for the world's most demanding IT environments, gets organizations ready for a perimeter-less enterprise. The company recently published a report with PSB Insights on the new security threats facing organizations as a result of the pandemic. It's titled IT Leads the Way: How the Pandemic Empowered IT. It features intelligence from 500 senior-level IT decision-makers. Visit tanium.com/empowerit to download the full report. And we thank Tanium for sponsoring our show. PIR, the Public Interest Registry, the folks behind the .org domain, recently launched the DNS Abuse Institute. They say that their goal is to provide tools to identify and report DNS abuse. Graeme Bunton has taken on the role as the DNS Abuse Institute's inaugural director. He joins us to explain the mission of the organization.
So the DNS Abuse Institute was founded by PIR, who run the .org registry. And PIR has in their name, Public Interest Registry, this public interest mission. And over the past few years, I would say, the prevalence of DNS abuse, and I can go into the definition of that in a minute, has become an increasing issue. And they were trying to think about how they could use their public interest mission to really make a dent into that problem. And the result of that was to try and stand up its own sort of institute.
Yeah, I mean, let's dig into that. I mean, what are some of the issues that we face when it comes to DNS?
So DNS abuse, and let's make sure we're all talking about the same thing, is we define as malware, botnets, farming, phishing, and spam, where it's serving as a vehicle for those previous items. And those are, online harms that are using the DNS specifically to cause them. And those are online harms that use the DNS itself to cause those harms. And so we have seen the sort of in the operation of the registry, and I actually come historically from a registrar, and maybe I'll come back to that in a sec, that those things are causing real harms around the world. And there's been like a lack of coordinated effort on these issues. And so this was really where we thought the DNS Abuse Institute could make a real difference.
And so what are some of the things that you're looking to do here? What do you hope to accomplish?
So I think the first thing that we really need to do, and maybe backing up slightly, is, I've been on board now for, I think, a week and a half. And so we're really still figuring out the breadth and scope of our strategy and how we're going to prioritize the things that we're going to work on. And that requires quite a bit of digging and some research. But I think to start, we really need to be able to get the community, so the sort of, registrar and registry industry and cybersecurity to a certain extent, to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing And so that's going to be develop a model to measure DNS abuse across the industry, publish that model, and make sure that we're all addressing the same problem. So that, I think, is step one. And then it's going to be working through the pillars that the Institute is sort of founded on. And those are collaboration, so that's making sure that we're working together as an industry. It's education, and that's making sure that everybody has the resources and understanding. And then innovation is our third pillar. And that's where we're really going to begin building tools and providing really interesting things for the industry to start really getting better. That's the one that I find pretty interesting.
That's Graeme Bunton from the DNS Abuse Institute. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. There's a reason more than half of today's ransomware victims end up paying the ransom. Cybercriminals have become thoughtful, taking time to maximize your organization's potential damage and their payoffs. After achieving root access, the bad guys explore your network, reading email, finding data troves, and once they know you, they craft a plan to cause the most panic, pain, and operational disruption. Ransomware has gone nuclear. The folks at KnowBe4 have an upcoming webinar that'll get you up to speed on ransomware. In this webinar, you'll find out why data backups, even offline backups, won't save you, why ransomware isn't your real problem, and how your end users can become your best last line of defense. Go to knowbe4.com/ransom to learn more about the webinar. That's knowbe4.com/ransom. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Dinah Davis. She is the VP of R&D at Arctic Wolf. Dinah, always great to have you back. I want to talk today about measuring success and how you establish good security metrics within a company. What sort of things can you share with us?
Yeah, so really your metrics have to be related to the organization's risk profile, right? One set of metrics that is going to help one company isn't necessarily the same set of metrics that matters for another. You know, like a healthcare organization has very different risk levels than a law firm or than a tech company, right? And so you can't just have a basic blanket set of metrics that are going to work for everyone. But what you can do is really measure your amount of risk in your threat landscape. So the first thing you need to do that is to identify the vulnerabilities you have in your system. So you can do this with a vulnerability assessment tool. We have one with Arctic Wolf. It will look through your system to find the level of software that's running everywhere, like each piece of hardware and software, what is it running? It'll then look those versions of software up in a publicly accessible system that the National Vulnerability Database, or the NVD, it's what it's called, and determine if there's any vulnerabilities. And it'll give you a list of the vulnerabilities and their common vulnerabilities and exposures, which we call a Cve score. So if you hear people talking about a Cve score, that's what it is. And so once you have this list of like everything that's going on in your network and vulnerabilities, this is how you want to prioritize, right? So the Cve score goes from like 0 to 10, okay? If it is a 9 or a 10, you drop everything. You drop everything and you go patch that immediately. Right. A high is pretty close to drop everything, but maybe not quite as severe as the 9 or 10. A 9 or a 10 means there's active hacks against it. There's active attacks, right? So if you're in a medium of a 4 to a 6.9, then you can use, you want to plan a maintenance window to fix it. You don't want to maybe wait until the next one, but you want to plan one, but it doesn't need to be the next day. It should just be soon. And anything below that you can fix in a regular maintenance window, right? So now you want to measure yourself against your CVEs and what your scores are here. So you want to look at your mean time to patch. So for anything above a 7, how long does it take your organization to fix it? you want to track that so that you know if you're fixing them faster or slower, if you need to change process around patching so that you can improve, right? So tracking how many issues above a 9 or a 10, really anything above a 7, how many of those you have, how many mediums and how many low risk you have, trending that over time, and looking at the mean time to patch. Those are really good metrics to look at. That doesn't matter what kind of organization you are, but it takes into account your risk profile, right? Another important metric to watch is your account takeover risk, right? So for an account takeover, critical risk, it means the password and the username and possibly personal identifiable information was leaked, and there could be malware using that information being used right now. So you want to drop everything. Go immediately force a password change for all accounts for that user on your system, and then audit any activity that your user had in the system, making sure you're doing scans of their laptop. High risk is, the user account was revealed and maybe a decryptable or plain text password. Pretty high risk. Again, reset their passwords immediately. And then medium and low is, a little slower. You have to react. Maybe their account was exposed. Maybe an encrypted password was exposed. But not a lot else. And so then you can have, the user rotate their corporate credentials the next business day. It's not a drop everything. So that's something you want to track on an ongoing basis.
Now, do you ever find that you sort of have like a mismatch between the severity, but what it actually means to a particular company? In other words, something comes back and it says, hey, this isn't, in a normal ranking of severity, it may not be that high, but for this particular company, it is high.
Yeah, that can happen too, because it depends on what you're using various systems for. If it's a medium, but it's like, let's say it's a medium vulnerability, but it's a main system you're using with a lot of like customer specific or private data or important data in it, that could mean it bumps it up quite a bit for you. So you do want to evaluate them as they come in. Oftentimes they'll get a score, and then the client can also, a lot of the systems will allow for you to mark it as higher than it is, like manually push it higher so that you can schedule it to be changed faster.
All right. Well, Dinah Davis, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. And for professionals and cybersecurity leaders who want to stay abreast of this rapidly evolving field, sign up for CyberWire Pro. It'll save you time and keep you informed. It takes the day's work right out of your hands. Listen for us on your Alexa smart speaker, too. Don't forget to check out the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast, where I contribute to a regular segment called Security, I join Jason and Brian on their show for a lively discussion of the latest security news every week. You can find Grumpy Old Geeks where all the fine podcasts are listed. And check out the Recorded Future podcast, which I also host. The subject there is threat intelligence, and every week we talk to interesting people about timely cybersecurity topics. That's at recordedfuture.com/podcast. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Guru Prakash, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.